my computer. You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from the Bishop West Real Estate Mobile Tower right here in absolutely beautiful Northport, Florida. I've got Public Works in the house, Mr. Billy Carlson. How you doing, buddy?
I'm pretty good, John. Thanks for having me again. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I was talking to you just briefly before this all started, but I want to highlight a couple of things. We got a really special show coming up with you next month. Can you go ahead and highlight that real quick and tell people what we're going to do and tell them to spread the word, get it out there? So
Sure, absolutely. So what we're going to do next week is Frank Lama, solid waste manager.
Next week or next month?
Next month, sorry. We keep saying next week.
Right.
Next month, Frank Lama, solid waste manager, and his crew are going to pull a couple of recycling bins from, a random address and pick a house at random. We're going to bring the bins in, give them some replacement bins for the time being, and we're going to go through live and sort through a bin and say, hey, this is recyclable, this is not, this is good, this is a great bin. This resident could try maybe a little harder, whatever the case may be, however it shakes out, we'll see. It'll be good. It'll be live, just a live look in at what our guys deal with every week.
And the importance of that is that what we're trying to do is keep the recycling high and the contamination low.
Exactly.
And that hands-on, eyes-on experience that we're going to offer to the radio listening audience. We're going to do it live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So you're going to actually be able to see it live if you watch the show on any of those spotlights next week or next month. And really, it kind of sets it up for a really good interactive show right on site at we're going to do that at Price Boulevard, right?
Correct. We're going to do it right here at the Public Works campus. So we've got clearance from everybody. We're all set. Fourth Monday, I forget the date now, but fourth Monday, September, we'll be here live to go through some recycling totes
and really that's the importance of that to our community and to Public Works is that the goal is twice as much recycling and less contaminants. And I know we've highlighted this before, but talk about why Northport is really targeted on less contamination, because the taxpayers are affected by that.
Correct. So the cleaner our recycling material is, the lower our contamination rate is, the larger the rebate we see from our recycling processor when we bring it there, and they sell it on the secondary recycling market. So obviously the cost of disposing of garbage at the landfill is going to be, it's always going to be rising. As the communities grow, we have more garbage. As the landfill increases their tipping fees, these are things we don't control. What we can control is the quality of recycling material that we bring. What we can control is the quality of material that we receive, which is why we heavily emphasize education on doing it the right way. And the cleaner material we bring, the more money we get back on a rebate, which obviously is not going to be a check in everybody's mailbox. We're not going to send you a check for $1.27 or whatever it shakes out to be per resident, but that's money that we can kind of offset the rising costs of garbage at the landfill.
So really, if people looked at the real tactical way, the more that they can recycle the correct way and the less contamination that we have, there's money savings when it comes to budget items, which also go back to rate increases on taxes. If we can maintain that growth in income through the recycle program, doesn't that offset a lot of times anything that you would have to increase and ask for more money in like a tax bill?
Ideally, yep. In an ideal world, we're able to offset as much as possible, the cost to dispose of waste when that increases. Whether that's because of landfill tipping fees, or we have to add another truck for another route because of the growing population, things like that. Anything we can do to increase recycling and increase that rebate, we can help offset even just a little bit. It may not seem like a lot, but when you're talking about, we're on pace for about 400,000 back by the end of the year in rebate. That's a big chunk of change. So it's definitely a help when you're comparing against the rising cost of garbage disposal. And again, as we've discussed before, the tonnage for garbage disposal is way larger than recycling. Uh, so anything we can do to kind of offset that increase, we'd like to, obviously.
And it's important for the community to understand what we do, how we do it as far as Nordport is concerned. And the beauty of having this out on location next week or next month is that the hands-on that we've not had yet on the visual side of things, I think that's going to add a lot to it, because I think it's going to open the dialogue for a lot of different conversations on what really is a recycling component and what is not.
Sure, sure. And I've done is this recyclable posts kind of fairly regularly throughout the summer. We've kind of tried to emphasize, summer related items, things like things you bring to the beach, or things you play with in the pool, things you'd use in the pool, garden hoses, bathing suits, and towels and things like that. Um, but I can grab stock images of those, or I can grab beach towels. The posts we did, those were my own beach towels, because thankfully we haven't found an overwhelming number of them on the recycling material, but we have. And I think something like this, where we see it live, where it's actually coming out of somebody's recycling bin, we have that you can see live visually. We're not just making this stuff up. We're not just coming up with random items. Hey, what about this? Random pool float. You can see that these are actually things that we're coming across and dealing with on a weekly basis.
And because of the importance of our program, I had this conversation today, being a real estate agent in the city of Northport and surrounding areas. We really have a chest pounding opportunity to talk about our program and what the value is to a taxpayer. Other communities don't have really what we have.
Right.
And so that cost is passed along through maybe waste management or a different program that they have implemented, but they're kind of at the mercy of the landfills at this point, because the landfills are not really governed, are they? They kind of make their own rates and kind of throw them out there, and you're kind of stuck paying them, correct?
I would have to read up on what kind of regulations or anything that they're hampered by. I imagine they can't just overnight double the rates, but it's kind of, we're kind of at their mercy. If they say, hey, we've got to increase this much because we're doing this and we've got to pay for it, that's, what are we going to do? We're not going to just suddenly stop collecting garbage. We're not going to suddenly stop disposing of it somewhere and just start piling it up, out east somewhere. It's still got to be disposed of. And so when the landfill says, hey, this is how much your rates are going up, we don't really have a huge say in that.
And that's the bonus of having the city of Northport actually, and really Frank kind of spearheading this whole thing, and really targeting what should have happened years ago, okay, and did. And then also with the fact that they are listening, a leadership in our town, even with the transition of leaders in and out with elections and term limits, we're still getting the same support, because they see the value of what the recycling program brings to the city, correct?
Right. Right. It would be hard. I think you'd be hard pressed as a newly elected official to come in and see the kind of success we've had and then, try to rock the boat in any way. So when you have turnover, as you will with the commission seats and things like that, the one thing Frank can bring when he needs to ask for something or is pitching an idea like the transfer station that we're trying to get in place, uh,
Yep.
he's got facts. He's got years of doing it. The recycle, they said, hey, prove to us that it's going to work, to keep trucks in town and keep fuel costs down and show us how it's going to save residents money. He did. He put up the recycling center. I believe the cost of that was 300,000. And if we're looking at a $400,000 rebate, just in this year we've already paid for it. But it was obviously it paid for itself even previous to this year. So even if you have a new set of commissioners come in, it's easy for Frank to take them ideas and say, "Here's the hard proof. Here's how we know it's working. This is why we need it, and this is how we can make it work."
Well, we've got Peter Benson. Because he threw a like up there, I appreciate anybody that's listening in the social media world to throw comments up. If you're on Real Talk 97.5 FM, listen to Real Talk, throw a comment up. That's the one that I get to capture the most. Common Grounds, I do go back and follow those. Twitter and Facebook, I do check on those, or YouTube, I'm sorry. But if you're willing to throw a comment up or a question up, I'd be more than happy to read it and we'll get quick responses. We do the same thing on all the shows, Mondays and Fridays, 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock. It's what really makes the show happen a lot of times is the participation from the listening audience and the fact that we really appreciate the fact that people share this information, because we do public works once a month, and really there's something to be learned each time. So what I'd like to do is kind of go through what a driver does on his rounds, because I had an incident with recycling. They changed up our time frame, and I missed it. But then we had a bulk collection come through, and I got blessed because my neighbor had bulk cardboard to be picked up, so I got to get rid of that, and then I also got to get rid of my cans. But my 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 can, because my cardboard was exposed, not by a lot, but just about 6 inches. I got the like the tan color tag put on top of my can. Can you kind of go
Shapes.
through? Yeah, well, can you go through those tags and tell people why and what they're for?
So the tags are used primarily as an educational opportunity. Um, and sometimes they'll take if for whatever reason they tag it, whether it's wrong materials or in your case if the lid isn't closed all the way, a lot of times they'll still take it, but leave the tag as an educational opportunity. Um, and the big thing for something like if they tag it and say, hey, your lid wasn't closed all the way, uh, the big thing here, especially during rainy season, which obviously we've been in the midst of, some nice heavy thunderstorms and such,
Yep.
sometimes randomly overnight. um, the big thing is, obviously, you want your lids to stay closed because if you got a roadside, you don't want it to get blown open or blown over and everything spills everywhere. Ideally, the lid is closed. The other part of that is for rainy season, especially like this week is cardboard week. If you've got your lid doesn't close and it may be fractions of an inch, which is more easy to work with. But if you've got a bin that's wide open, as I've seen some driving into work that they've got TV 80-inch TV box and it's just crammed in there, standing up, and the bin's not even close to being able to close. When you talk about one of these thunderstorms rolling in, before you're able to get it collected, we're talking about soaked cardboard. And so if the cardboard doesn't have time to dry out before it's picked up, before it's collected, before it's transported, the processor is less likely to take soaking wet cardboard because the consistency or the material is just kind of been damaged or contaminated. Um, and then the other part of that is if it's your garbage bin gets filled up with rainwater, when our guys dump it, water is essentially empty tonnage when we bring it to the landfill. And everybody here knows, if you're in Florida, water is going to find its way into every little crack and crevice. And before you know it, you've got a garbage truck that's got a bunch of water, rainwater, whatever, and you're basically paying for nothing. You're paying for empty tonnage, and obviously we want to try to avoid that. So things like that, if they mark that on your bin and close it down, we're not trying to shame people. We're not trying to yell at you or make you feel bad. It's They're used primarily as an educational tool, so that we can let you know, hey, you did this wrong. Here it's marked. Try to fix it for the next time.
Well, and we've talked about this in the past that one of the hardest things to do in our town, because we have WKDW trying to help with get this information out, not just with my show but multiple other shows. You also do a huge social media presence. You also do like the Newcomers Day and get the information out that way. So you're very active, and the city is very active in trying to push information out. But it's one of the hardest things to do when 70 to 80% of the people drive into town to live here, and
Right.
they drive away to go to work. And
Right.
so getting information into people's hands, if you do get tags, please take into consideration that it is one of the tools that they use, really just to highlight the reasons why you got the tag, and then help with the fact that if you want to keep our tax rate down and our decontamination down, or our contamination down, you basically follow the simple rules that we have in place. And I want to go one step further now, and I I want to talk about the center, because I don't know that people understand. When you talked about the center earlier, we have a recycle center that actually has a person working there that
Correct.
actually does what?
So our trucks collect recycling material. They go down to our recycling center over on Pan American, offload all their material, and our guy Jeremy, you may have seen him highlighted on Facebook, I believe a few weeks ago, um, busts his tail to sort through everything, scoop everything in, pack it into the trailer. And he's got an eye out for potential contaminants. So for this week, it's cardboard. He's going to keep an eye out for those insanely greasy pizza boxes. And obviously, we're not going to catch everything, but we catch most. Our contamination rate is close to zero, I believe, this year. So that's pretty incredible in and of itself. And that's made possible by residents doing it the right way, making sure they're putting the right material there. Jeremy is busting his butt down at the recycling center, and making sure he's keeping an eye out for materials that don't belong. Plastic bags are always in recycling. Uh, that's one of our biggest bugaboos. Even in tan container week, we still get the one thing we get is the water bottle wraps. So there's that slim piece of cardboard in the bottom, and then it's wrapped by plastic. People will just take that and toss it in the bin. But so Jeremy sorts through all that. He's using a tractor down there to sort through, scoop it all up, pack it in the trailer, pack it as tight as he can, and that's one thing that Frank noted, and why we kind of highlighted him on Facebook, is our trailer loads have gotten much bigger, much heavier, so we're running those trailers less to run the same amount of material. Uh, so that's what he's doing. He's packing that in tight, getting it ready for transport, and then that trailer obviously would take that down to the recycling processor in Sarasota.
So I'm going to ask this question, because I know the answers to where I'm going, because we learned the dollar amount the last month, on the show. But how often do we have to buy a new trash truck?
That's a good question. That's an excellent Frank question. I believe he's got a couple that he's trying to get over the next couple years. Part of it is
We really don't target one a year, right?
I don't believe so.
So
But I would have to touch base with Frank on that.
the fun fact, and we'll touch more on that next month because having Frank on, we can go more in depth in that. Uh, but the fun fact that I found out was that it's $400,000 for a truck,
Right,
and
right.
if we can keep that
Definitely.
usage down, the mileage down that we were wearing and tearing on it, that just saves money in that regard too. And the decontamination part that Jeremy is so successful and the residents are now getting more in tune to. Actually, if we had to put that into the budget, the recycling program actually pays for that.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so
It's
that's
an
it's not.
astounding coincidence that it works out like that. But
Yeah, but I found it to be very ironic because we're talking about a $400,000 truck that otherwise would have been put into the budget, and 400,000 either ask for extra, which is a tax increase, or we turn around and we have to lessen budgets elsewhere to cover the $400,000 expenditure.
right,
And old school says really only one true component of a city that makes money, which is the police, because they can write tickets.
right.
Okay, now we all laugh about that, but I'm I hate to say this, but I'm almost 60. I've been laughing at that for at least 42 years because I've been driving that long. But the beauty in that is that we're really talking about a unique situation in the whole state, let alone the United States, that we have in Northport that other communities don't have, that we can actually say, while we aren't making money collectively at Public Works, we do have a component that pays us back.
Right.
Where if you take that to any other city, that's an expenditure.
Correct.
And so anytime that I think you can talk about the positive shift of money in a budget that we are responsible for as taxpayers, whether it be a decrease or an increase, which I would love to have more decreases than increases. But I know that we work, and Frank works really hard at trying to figure out not just how to target the better ways of doing it, but actually target it to increase that flow of money back into the department so it takes that budget pressure off.
Right.
And I've heard him talk about that in depth. Now, we're like I said, we are going to have a show next month. And for the listening audience who's just joining us, can you highlight again next month's show with Frank and tell them what it's about?
So next week's show we'll have Frank and or next month's show. Did it again.
Yeah.
Uh, Next month's show, September, we will have Frank and his crew will pull a couple recycling bins from random addresses. And the reason for doing that is, so that we're not, we grab Frank's garbage cans. Obviously, they're going to be in pretty good shape. Frank knows what he's doing. So we're going to grab some random recycling containers and we'll bring them to the Public Works campus. We'll be doing a live show from here to dig through somebody's recycling bins. We'll obviously leave them with some containers in the meantime, so we're not, taking their recycling bins and then they have nothing to recycle with. Uh, but we'll be going through those and basically evaluating the quality of their recycling live and in person.
And we hit on that the first part of the show, but ultimately for the listeners just joining into the radio show or on Facebook, is that really it's one, trying to educate on the value of what's happening with your recycled tubs at home or your bins at home, how to really properly do it. And then the reason that we're bringing the show live to the Price Boulevard campus is to really go through hands on and dig in to what happens to a recycle tub when it hits the facility, because Jeremy is actually going through everybody's recycle and pulling out the contamination products. And isn't our target now? You said we're near zero, but isn't the target 5% or less?
It's around there. I think I want to say last year we were about 2%. So if we're, obviously less than that, we're doing better this year. But
And the better we are, is it the better that we keep contamination down, the bigger the rebate?
correct, correct. So if we bring, let's say, I think last year we brought, I, I'm not sure of the exact tonnage, but it might have been 700 or 7,000 tons, something crazy like that, recycling material. If we have 5% of that is contaminated, the rebate that we get on that is smaller than if for the same tonnage we have contamination rate of 2%, or if we get down to closer to 0%. And the reason being, the lower the rate of contamination, the more that they're able to sell.
So I want to talk a little bit about the neighbors who are doing this. Do we have anyone up and down this coast right now that has a program like ours?
Not that I'm aware of.
Do we have one on the other side of the coast?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so now I got to collect myself here a little bit and say, is there anyone in the state other than us doing it?
There may be, but I feel like we're kind of setting the standard.
All
For
right,
sure.
in doing that, I know that like Charlotte County has had us in and talked to us or talked to Frank several times about what they could do, because they're looking at with everything that's happening in the world and prices elevating, and really trying to get leadership to grab a hold of these things in a different fashion. If we're setting the standards, I've got to believe that people are contacting us and looking at what we're doing.
Sure. Absolutely. And Frank has mentioned as much. The area's solid waste managers meet from time to time. And, it's usually a point of discussion. How is the recycling program doing so well? I think the big thing is when we made the switch to the dual stream recycling process, we were doing it as the city itself is kind of young enough, but the population itself is not so large that it was impossible to re-educate for a new process. And I think that's for other communities around us, that's going to be the challenging part. If they were to try to make a similar change, is being able to educate all of their residents. Well, this is what we're doing now, and this is how you have to do it. This is how you have to get on board. That's obviously a big obstacle, and I think that's kind of what's held at least a couple of the areas around us back from doing it.
Well, and I have to say that we just talked about an expenditure for the center. We've got another center uh, slated to go in soon, right?
Ideally, in the next few years, yes.
So, and that's already, these are conversations on the open desk right now of Frank and commissioners who are understanding that the dollars actually mean something. So you have actually other cities who are trying to figure out how to do that right now. And there's an expenditure with education that comes into play.
Sure.
And because our city is young, we're one of the youngest cities out here. We're also not quite built out. Where I don't even think we're halfway yet.
Right.
And anything that's new that's opening up, actually, we have the opportunity on Newcomers Day, or even working with the builders or realtors out there, like myself, spreading the word about, hey, get your recycle programs. There's also different things that we can do as residents, um, that that we can do to educate ourselves. Can you talk about the website and also talk about any app that's available so that people can take a look at those things?
Absolutely, absolutely. So The website actually updated last week to the new .gov address. So cityofnorthport.com will still work, but the new address is northportfl.gov. And if you go to northportfl.gov/solid waste, we've got obviously we've got several pages on how to get rid of appliances, how to dispose of those. Those are actually free because they're pretty much bulk metal, which is recyclable. Bulk pickups, yard waste pickups, goes in depth on recycling. We've got a whole page with ideas, suggestions of what can be recycled, what can't be recycled. But on the solid waste main page, we've got a web app for Recycle Coach, which is actually our mobile app. And if you've got questions there, there's actually a what goes where search. And we actually just posted about this last week to remind residents that it's there. But let's say you've got a styrofoam food container and you are unsure if that's recyclable. You can type in styrofoam. It'll pop up several options, whether it's a styrofoam takeout container, styrofoam cup, anything like that. And you click on that, hit search, and it'll tell you styrofoam is not recyclable in our program. Things like batteries, tires, hazardous chemicals, anything like that, you can search in the what goes where function, and that will tell you A, if we accept it, and B, if we don't accept it, where actually in the area you can take it to drop it off. So for things like hazardous chemicals, it'll tell you the address for the Chemical Collection Center on Jackson Road in Venice. Tires, it does recommend you can call around tire shops in the area. They may take them. But all these things are located within this web app at northportfl.gov/solid waste, or the Recycle Coach app itself, which is actually free in the Google Play Store and the Apple Store. I'm not sure what they're at, App Store, I guess.
Right.
uh, but free in both places. It's free to use. You don't have to, there's nothing to pay, there's no subscription, anything like that. You can just download the app, put in your information. You can actually go into your personal settings and set for notifications. So what it'll do is remind you every week, and you can set the time frame if you want to be reminded the day before, 2 days before. If for some reason you want to know a week ahead, you can set the notifications that way, and it'll actually push you a notification and say, hey, tomorrow's your collection day. It's this bin, the garbage bin, yard waste bin. So we do have things like that, and then we also use that to push out notifications for holidays. We've got Labor Day coming up. Labor Day is the day that we don't collect because the landfill is closed on Labor Day. When we have hazardous waste events coming up, you will get notifications for that. We'll send those out via that too. So it's definitely a handy app to have on hand. And if you're not the smartphone type, I know we have some in our city, some of our residences that aren't necessarily up on smartphones, things like that. They'd rather just have an email. You can go to northportfl.gov/solid waste and use the web app there, and you can actually sign up for email notifications that way as well.
Nice, nice. And it's all these things that we're trying to do. Uh, People can actually find this information online. They can actually talk to people even at the Chamber of Commerce. And do we have information at the Chamber of Commerce about recycling?
I would have to check with them. I'm pretty sure we've made our solid waste guides and stuff available to them. And then we've also, for the newcomers days and things like that, we bring a stack with us for those, a stack of the recycling calendars, everything like that. So the information is definitely out there. It's definitely available if you're interested.
So, how long have you now been with the city of Northport?
About a year and a half now.
So, a year and a half into what you've done. Um, so let's step back for a second and take a look at when you started,
Okay.
and, and how you felt about what you were doing then, and then give us your insight on what now has transpired over the year and a half that you've been with the city, and your point of view now.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll say when I started, um, I had a very cursory knowledge of public works and solid waste and recycling and things like that. I knew pretty much as Public Works makes the city work, what they have their hands in, garbage recycling, road repairs, things like that, traffic lights. And obviously now, a year and a half later, I have a better idea of how in depth the garbage and recycling goes. There are a lot less questions that go to Frank on, hey, is this recyclable? What do you got? I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure about that. I'll say this: the stark, I think, example would be the first newcomers day I was here was last May, and I've been here for about a month and a half, maybe 2 months. And we had one of our front office personnel, one of our CSRs, come with me because obviously I wasn't completely in tune with what's going on and how to answer everybody's questions. And
So
now
you can actually use the word green in the recycling.
very, very much green, very much green. I knew the basics. I knew plastic bags were not recyclable. Um, Styrofoam was something I learned about on the job. Like I said, I think I said last week or last month or one of our past shows, the red solo cups. I had no idea that those could potentially be not recyclable, and it just depends on which plastic they're made of. So, number five is polypropylene, is perfectly recyclable. Number six is polystyrene. It's made of styrofoam, styrofoam-based plastic, not recyclable. And I know I have those words down pat because Frank and I shot a video just on solo cups and stuff like that. And we probably shot it 30 times because the polypropylene and polystyrene got us all tripped up. I don't know how many times. But now I can go to the newcomers days and I'm definitely uh, more knowledgeable, especially as it comes to garbage and recycling. We've done so many of these videos and posts now that there's very few questions that someone can throw at me at a newcomer's day where I don't have an answer or have a serviceable enough answer to where if I have to, I can get contact information, find out an answer more in depth and go more in depth with them.
So where would you place the city on and I'm not looking for a grade, but where you started and now, because your job is really to educate and to get information out. I know that we've been doing this show with Public Works for almost 4 years now,
Mhm.
um, and so I know that I've learned a ton in getting the information out, and I've been able to, as a realtor, regurgitate some of this information, really to really gain a lot of respect within the community because they don't know about it. But
Right.
where would you find yourself now compared to when you started? In talking with the community, do you think that Northport as a whole is getting more in tune with it?
I
Uh,
do. I do definitely. I know it's more common now that we have newer residents that come to like the newcomers days and things like that, and they're more familiar with the city's Facebook page and Twitter and all our social media outlets. I can't tell you how many times I don't know if it was the newcomers day or we did one of the school visits, but I think every time I mention the Recycle Coach app to somebody, they say, "Oh yeah, I've got that. I use it every time, every week. It's great. It's the best thing ever." And I won't go so far as to say that that's something necessarily that has increased because of I'm here. The person before me, Michael Fear, did an excellent job. Uh,
Absolutely.
he did an outstanding job. He set a high standard for the position. I think a big part of it is it's starting to sink in with the residents, and I think a big part of that is when you tell them things like last year. I think the rebate it kind of turned about halfway through the fiscal year last year, and so I want to say we got it might have been around 100,000 in rebate for the year. And when you start to tell people, well, this is what we're doing, and this is how recycling is paid off in this way, when you start to put a tangible reward or outcome on that, I think it starts to turn heads. And if I'm a resident and I hear that recycling is, and this is what I try to emphasize on Newcomers Day. If I hear that recycling is one of the few ways that we're able to bring money back to the city, and maybe offset the high cost of disposing of garbage, I might be a little more inclined to make sure that I'm doing it the right way. And so I think last year, like I said earlier, I think last year our contamination rate was around 2.5%. And to have it lower this year, I think more speaks to the residents making a more concerted effort for sure.
And I said something to somebody the other day when it comes to real estate and trying to start it. He's like, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, imagine that you talk to everybody and you make a little bit of money off each person." I said, "So how many people would you go talk to?" And he said, "Everybody." And I said, "Then go do that."
Right,
Here's the thing: recycle is the same way. If you're not doing recycling and you just decide to do your cans, you're actually helping the city
right,
lower your costs if you're a resident in Northport. So every can or every bottle that you put into recycling is practically either a new piece of equipment that the tax dollar doesn't have to pay for, or even something that goes into your wallet as far as no tax increase.
right,
Or I've talked to enough of the commissioners where they're really working hard at trying to make sure that the tax dollar, the tax rate, is low. We don't want to increase it. That's why we're looking as a community. We're looking at more commercial, and we're trying to bring in dollars in different fashions so that the city is sustainable within itself.
right,
So that's one way of going at it. But the other way is every chance we get to work with Public Works and understand why Public Works is putting so much time and energy into the rebate, and understand, listeners, that we are probably the only city in Florida that is actually getting a rebate.
right,
Other communities have tax rate increases or they go without something else.
right.
So there's perspective on everything. Even if you're a renter within our community, if and I've heard people say this, we've talked about this on the show. Well, we do have renters and they really don't care. Here's a way to care. If the landlord's rate goes up, so does the rental side.
Exactly.
So there is perspective on everything. As long as you don't care if you're going to pay more money, neither does the landlord because he's just going to collect it from you.
Right,
So if you're recycling, that's one component he actually can't use against you, which
right,
is they're not doing recycling, and all the renters in our community are not doing recycling. So we're not getting the biggest rebate check. Well, that's because your rent's going to go up. So we have that component that other neighborhoods don't have. And we've got about 9 minutes left. And I want to hit something else because we talked about the app for recycling, but you do have another app that Public Works uses. And I as a motorcycle rider, I love to ride the streets of Northport because we don't have potholes really on any of our major roads. And if we do, I know that I take pictures and send them in.
right,
And we're not looking, for the most part, in Northport, we're not even looking for potholes. Even if you find a hole where somebody's cut corners and made a bigger hole, turn it in. They will come out and they will fix it along the roadways and get those taken care of, because the worst thing that could happen, whether you're walking on a bike or in a car or on a motorcycle, is to hit one of those by accident and flip off the bike, flip off your bicycle, or flip yourself into the oncoming traffic.
right,
It's even worse. So the one nice thing is we actually have Public Works taking great care of our traffic lights, and making sure that the flow of traffic is really under control, and also the potholes. Can you talk a little bit about the app?
absolutely. So if you're, let's say you're driving down Price Boulevard or Toledo Blade or Atwater, whatever roads you frequent, and you notice there's a good sized pothole or the edge of the road is degrading, or let's say you're turning into your neighborhood and you notice the roadside by the turn has been starting to chip away, you can actually get on the North Report app and submit a concern via there. And you just pop on the location. Typically, it'll take your location from your phone's location data. If you got that turned on, it'll instantly pop up the spot on the map, and then just put in a little bit of information. A corner of Atwater and whatever street, and say there's the road is degrading, and submit that. Typically, we get those requests filed away within the day. Um, and we'll get somebody out there to assess it and fix it as quick as we can. It
And
goes the same for stop signs. If you notice the stop sign is down, those typically get high priority. You can submit those on SeeClickFix or North Report, which is supported by SeeClickFix. Um, or you can call customer service 941-240-8050. And those actually get the highest priority. We want to get somebody out there to fix them as soon as we're able to. Anything like that. If you got trees in your neighborhood coming from an undeveloped lot and they're hanging out to the road and they're blocking, visibility, please report these things and we will have somebody out to cut the trees back as quick as we can.
so there's a lot of things that people can do to stay connected with public works without really picking up the phone. But if they had to, there again, that's a really easy process. It's just getting the person on the phone, letting them know exactly where it is, and you'll take care of it. And I will tell you, as many times as I've used it, it's usually within 24 to 48 hours that it's done.
Right.
And that's pretty impressive for a town our size with our growth. Is that I think very prideful in making sure that our roads are not hazardous.
Right. Right.
Uh, do we have any major repaving going to happen on any of our major roads? Do you know soon?
So I know we've got a joint project with Charlotte County coming up to fully repave Hillsborough Boulevard. And if you travel that westbound is the Northport side of the road, and eastbound is Charlotte County's.
Yeah.
And so it is something we get several reports on, here and there. They seem to come in bursts. They come in groups. We get a couple at a time. There's a pothole here. Please come fix it. And if it's our side of the road, we'll come out, we'll patch it. A lot of times it ends up being Charlotte County side of the road. But we do have a joint project coming up. I believe it's supposed to be done by the end of 2023 to repave basically the entire stretch of Hillsborough Boulevard.
Well, that's going to make that extremely nice, but it's also going to make it difficult for a lot of the people that live along that. But when that time comes, just be braced for it and be prepared yourself, because the end result will be a much safer road to be on.
Absolutely, and that's one of our biggest. Hey, there's potholes. As far as our big roads go, big arterial roads, that's one of our biggest bugaboos. And the tricky part is that it's only half ours and half Charlotte County's. But essentially, Charlotte County is going to be heading up the resurfacing project, and then we're going to be paying them our cut. So it is a dual project there. We're both working together on it, and hopefully we can get that road smoothed out. Hopefully it's a painless process. We can get it fixed up and have it looking nice.
So I'm going to hit something else real quick, because I think you can give a great answer for this, and really maybe educate people on it. But I've noticed that during a lot of the rush hour timeframes, Sumter and Toledo Blade at 75
Yes.
are both really heavy traffic,
Yes.
backup oriented things. Is
Correct.
that City of Northport, or who will assess that and put traffic lights in? And do you know if there's anything slated?
So they are. They have done the study. Basically, both of those areas are owned, operated, maintained by the Florida Department of Transportation. We have been working with them collaboratively to come up with solutions for those. So they've run their report to determine the necessity of traffic lights at both of those interchanges and have determined that they both fit the criteria necessary to install traffic lights. I believe the last I'd heard was it was going to be 18 months for design and everything like that, and then another 18 months to actually, because they'd have to redesign some of it before just plugging in streetlights. They'll have to redesign things to account for how the traffic lights are going to affect traffic and things of that nature. How we can avoid people who don't have to sit at the traffic light. If we can get them on the highway without using the traffic light, great. So that is something that's actively being worked on. We are working with FDOT for that, but I believe we're kind of at this point we're in like a 2 to 3 year process from when it would actually be ready to drive on.
And I did travel. We got 3 minutes left, but I did travel River Road the other day, and there's some major improvements going on there. Uh, do we have a projected date when they think that River Road from start to finish will be completed?
Those are so actually both stretches, the one from 75 to 41, and then on the other side of 41 are Sarasota County and FDOT. So I actually don't have a timeline for when those are supposed to be completed, but I know obviously if you've driven either side of it, you know that there's plenty of work being done. So
And it's being done as we speak. I mean,
right,
they're definitely working on it. I'm pretty sure that that's probably a good 2 or 3 years out from completion, but well needed in that regard too.
for
Uh,
sure.
Especially when it comes down to uh, getting the evacuation routes for the areas set up because of the dense population that's now moving in the
Right,
Weldon Park Northport area. So
absolutely,
uh,
absolutely.
well, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank the listening audience for being part of the show. Thanks for being on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter and following. I look forward to having you guys on Friday. I'm not going to tell you who the guest is yet. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Tune in at 3:05 to 4 o'clock. And I look forward to seeing y'all then. Billy, thanks so much for being on. And it's not going to be Billy, even though he said it 5 times. It's
Right,
not going to be Billy. But I will definitely talk to you next month. We're going to be on site and ready to have a great show and learn a ton about how to recycle and why, and go through other people's trash cans while we do it.
sure, absolutely. It's going to be exciting.
Awesome. All right. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks and have a great day. Okay. Drive safe, people. Bye bye.